Thank you, PJ. It is time for another edition of the Pair and a Spare podcast. I'm Justin Gaard from The Fan. We've got Ryan Burns from GopherIllustrated.com and Chip Scoggins from Football Across Minnesota and the Star Tribune. We are presented, as always, by our great partners at Jax Cafe. Make your reservations, including for Valentine's Day, at jaxcafe.com. The 2024 season, guys, is over. All the talk, all the speculation. It seems like just yesterday, the three of us were at Huntington Bank Stadium for fall camp. Chip was following around Coy Parrish like a little puppy dog, making sure he was going to return punts eventually and what spot he was going to get to play. And now here we are, day one, fast forward 20-ish weeks, and the season is over. And the Ohio State University, your national champions. We are taping this about 11 hours after the confetti fell in Atlanta. The Buckeyes with a pretty decisive but then kind of interesting victory over Notre Dame. Let's start there. Chip, I'll start with you. You wrote the column with the local angles going through. Anytime you can get James Laurinaitis in the mix, you do it. He was the Coy Parrish before Coy Parrish for you. But a pretty good title game. Ohio State, I think everybody kind of agreed at the beginning, if they play up to their capabilities, they will win the national championship. And they pretty much ran through this 12-team playoff, starting with your Volunteers and all the way through.
Yeah, at beginning of the season, I always do my kickoff preview stuff, and I picked Ohio State to win a national title. Didn't look too good after Michigan, but they clearly had the most talent in college football. I mean, when you look at their playmakers on offense, and we said it going in that as good as Notre Dame's defense has looked, they pretty much had, I don't know that they could score with Ohio State. They just have too many weapons. And to give them credit, I mean, I thought that game was done when it was 31-7 and Notre Dame kept fighting, and, you got a turnover after a spectacular catch and run there. But whatever it was at Michigan, I don't know if it was a wake-up call. I don't know if it made them angry with the flag planting, if it was whatever happened there that got that team focused. What I see today was their average margin of victory, 18 points in the playoff.
Yeah,
that's a pretty impressive run when you look, and you Tennessee, which had some firepower, Oregon, Texas, and then Notre Dame. That's a pretty impressive run to win those four games by a margin of 18 points. So they clearly were the best team.
I saw the tweet this morning, and I wish I remember who tweeted it because I give them credit, but Ohio State was the only team this season to beat 5 teams that were ranked in the AP top 5 at the time.
Right.
Yeah, they beat Oregon twice. They beat Penn State, Indiana, Tennessee, Texas, Notre Dame. If you want to put on the tinfoil hat, which I love to.
Oh boy, already? We just hit the 3-minute mark of the podcast. We're already doing this.
Well, that's where I saw the conspiracy theorists last night trying to tell me that they lost to Michigan just so they could get the better seed.
Oh,
in terms of
come on.
That was where they had to go through
Ryan.
Oregon, which was
Ryan.
Hey, I'm not telling you I believe it. I'm just giving the listeners the information.
We don't need to give oxygen to stupidity. All right. We don't need to do this. I read a story. His son barely even went to school after they lost to Michigan. Can you imagine as a father? Hey, kiddo, going to be a little rough for 3 weeks. We'll get you to Christmas break, but we got to drop this one to Michigan just so we get a better seed. Come on, let's not give oxygen. There's too much good stuff, Burnsy. Let's not give oxygen to stupidity. But go ahead. We had to put the brakes on that one.
I know. I'm with Chip though. I thought coming into the season that Ohio State and Oregon were the two best teams in the Big Ten, and I almost would argue that first time around out in Oregon when we were all out there at the Rose Bowl, that was almost like the de facto national championship.
Yeah,
where you got those two against each other for the first time, haymakers left and right. But Ohio State is just so gifted. That game started exactly the way it needed to start, with that 18-play drive for Notre Dame, just sucking the life out of it. PJ Fleck was somewhere watching that game with a giant smile on his face. With
Eric Decker in Nashville, probably.
Yeah.
Talk about that. Go ahead.
But Ohio State is just so gifted athletically. You just saw the difference between that's Notre Dame athletes. The other, they are recruiting at a blue chip level, yet Jeremiah Smith and Chip's boy, the tailback there, Judkins. They have so much athleticism everywhere, or even the big boys up front. People forget that Ohio State just won a national title, losing their first round left tackle in the playoff, plus their center, and they had to slide some guys around, and you would never have known.
Well, how about it when it's 3rd and 11? The game's still undecided at that point. 3rd and 11, all out blitz, and you're going to single cover Jeremiah Smith. That was a choice.
College football,
probably. Mark Craig, my colleague who's covered the NFL for 100 years, who I respect his opinion. He said that guy'd be a top 5 receiver in the NFL today. He thinks he's that gifted.
We love to speak in hyperbole in our profession. Trust me, I understand.
Yeah.
And Ashton Genty and Travis Hunter, again, guys we all voted for the Heisman. But goodness gracious, Jeremiah Smith is going to be so fun to watch these next 2 years.
Just think, and like I understand the rule, the 3-year rule, but if he could come out and be in the draft this year, was he the number 1 pick?
Non-quarterback, probably. Like, how teams roll. But it's worth the discussion for sure. And you're right, Chip. It was so funny that last series, it's 2 Will Howard runs for nothing, and everyone's going, oh boy.
Yeah.
What's going on here? And then Ryan Day and Will Howard just throw it all out on the table and go, oh, you think we're tight? Just hold on.
Yeah. and Chip Kelly.
Chip Kelly is obviously, the big time offensive coordinator, former head coach, former NFL coach, the whole bit. Great offseason acquisition, obviously, saying, you think we're afraid to go win this game? Hold my beer. Hold my rum runner. We'll go ahead and win this game. That was incredible. And I'm sure Marcus Freeman hasn't slept thinking about how do we let that guy beat us? How do we it reeked of Arizona State against Texas, right?
All out, but in overtime.
Like, you live by it, you die by it. You want to be aggressive, you want to dictate some things, but against good teams and good players, they might have the answer. And Sam Darnold might not have had the answer against Detroit or the Rams, but Will Howard and Jeremiah Smith had the answer. And that was what a signature play to win that thing.
Oh,
that was incredible.
He just ran right by the guy and just throw up this, this teardrop pass, and just how physically gifted. And he really, I think they were saying last night, Herbie was saying, was that his first catch in the second half? Because I thought they got really just, let's milk the clock and run the ball and try to, and they
Jim
did that.
Tressel was in attendance. There was an homage to Jim Tressel. Jim Tressel was there. There was definitely a tip of the cap to him on how that second half was played, but I don't blame him. Right?
Nah,
you're up big. You don't need to win you could, I guess, win the national title 60-7.
31-7. Every coach probably would have done that. You're just run the ball. You're playing great defense, and then you have the turnover that gave him a little life there. But it's interesting. When was that Michigan game?
November 30th.
Day after Black Friday. Yeah, November 30th.
We were thinking Ryan Day was done at that point. Remember, they were ready to run him out of Columbus because
I think our direct quotes that next podcast was, well, he better go win the national championship or else he's going to be out.
But I think I remember saying, would we be surprised if they pulled it together and went and won the national title? No, because they had that kind of talent. So it was a Darnold-esque change of fortunes for Ryan Day in terms of public opinion, right? The other way.
Yep.
I mean, people, whatever they feel about him, but you feel good when a guy is getting run out of town and all of a sudden picks himself up and wins the national title.
Yeah, Bruce Feldman from The Athletic wrote a good piece where he talked to his family. He talked to his wife last night, talked to his son, talked to his father-in-law, who was a longtime Division II basketball coach, I guess. And they had some great quotes just about what it was like and just how Ryan was through that deal. And basically, no one feels sorry for you. Pick yourself up, you go to work, you try to figure it out. And obviously, Ohio State adversity is different than most people's adversity, right? Like, it does get a little thick about like, man, what these guys have been through and blah, blah, blah. They're all getting paid a lot of money. Obviously, it's not for everybody. You sign up for that job. Like, you walk into that job knowing exactly what the expectations are. They're insane. They're irrational. It's foolish. But it's Ohio State. That's one of 5 or 6 jobs that have that, right? That it is. You do have to be ready for it, even if it is crazy. But it was cool to read some of the family stuff just about how he was the coach through all of it. And even players talking about how steady he was and taking the pressure off of his guys. And I don't think they lost a Michigan game to get a better seed. I'm not going to go that far. But,
all right.
But I do think, in a weird way, it gave them some extra galvanizing force of no one here, even in our own city, believes we can go do this. 3 weeks ago, Tennessee fans are driving up the interstate, putting, Tennessee stickers on the welcome to Columbus sign, thinking they're about to take over the place. I mean, it was just bad vibes all around, right? People were talking about how much orange was going to be there. People were talking about how much pressure was on Ohio State, and whatever it was, whether it relieved the tension losing to Michigan or gave them something to kind of settle themselves and refocus. It obviously, you can say, I think, hey, losing, of course, was awful to Michigan, but now nobody is going to care about it. Or the only people that care about it are idiots because they just went and had one of the best runs that college football team has ever had.
Yeah, I mean, at some point you say they're still Ohio State, right?
Mm-hmm.
They still got all this stuff. As bad as things looked and all that, you're still Ohio State. You still have Jeremiah Smith and Henderson and all these 5-star talent everywhere.
Jack Sawyer, guys that came back, that didn't need to come back for this moment.
Who's now the all-time receptions leader in Ohio State history.
I mean, Burnsy, how many guys on that roster are 4 and 5 stars when they came out of high school?
95.
I mean, 70% of them? Like 75, I don't know.
95.
One of the seniors was a 3-star. I can't remember which it was because I was reading about him. Like, they took a 3-star? Man, what happened there?
At the end of we need one more guy. There we go.
I guess they needed a body.
But yeah, I mean, yes, it's a terrible loss, and you don't want to lose the game. But, they had too much talent for that to sabotage who they are, right? And so, when they put their foot on the gas, I just didn't think there's any team that was going to be able to keep, even Oregon is high spot. I mean, I just think there's any team that was going to keep pace with them offensively and all those skill makers. And you look at just their running backs, and then you throw in their wide receivers. Like, how do you defend that group? As long as Will Howard didn't screw it up with picks, it was going to be hard to control that offense and score enough against their defense to keep pace.
It's we're 12 minutes in now. We've had one conspiracy, 3 minutes in, and then Chip, we just brought up the guy I wanted to talk about off the top. We're 12 and a half minutes in. We didn't even talk about the quarterback, Will Howard, who played outstanding last night.
Well, the entire playoff.
Yeah, going up against
how hot he came out against Tennessee and Oregon.
Yes, absolutely. And last night they didn't have an answer for him running the ball. I mean, wasn't the number like 7 or 8 first downs with his legs?
Yeah,
and some of them were designed. The old Tim Tebow. We're just gonna do a quick 3rd and 2, and you're gonna run it. That's old school Ohio State. Going back a couple of coaches, but he was unbelievable. At 90-some% completion percentage in the first half. Again, he's got talent. Just run the offense, don't screw it up. But we've seen a lot of guys screw it up when they've had talent, and he was great the whole playoff. And I was just really impressed with him last night, just managing everything and controlling the game and answering right after the 10-minute drive that Burnsy talked about. Like, that's important, right? To go right back down the field. And they had one. They didn't even finish their first possession in the first quarter. It went into quarter number 2, right? Like, they picked
1.5 possessions.
Yeah, they picked up a 3rd down and went into the second quarter and then scored there quickly thereafter. But man, Howard was outstanding last night.
His first 13 completions, right? First 13 passes were completed. Yeah.
Like, he was coming into that playoff, you didn't know what you were going to get. He'd been kind of up and down. They didn't ask him to do too much. And that's where in this playoff, I mean, I think about that Oregon game when I remember getting to, I think we were in Charlotte for the bowl game, watching that. And when he hit that second throw across the middle for a touchdown, I'm like, it's not going to be Oregon's day. Yeah. Like, if Will Howard is going to be white hot like this, you're just not going to go because they're just too talented. And that's almost part of it is they asked him to be, I think game manager isn't the right term, but if he's going to play above that level of like a glorified game manager and he's not going to turn the ball over and he's going to make big time throws, you're just not going to be at Ohio State, especially if they're going to beat you in the take give and just not turn the ball over in these big spots. Yeah, I'm with Guardsy. That was the thing I wanted to discuss. Like, Will Howard was really good and he's going to go to the Senior Bowl now. And like, he's probably got a pretty good chance to be drafted somewhere in the middle rounds after a performance like this against some of the best athletes in college football.
All right. Anything else Ohio State related we want to talk about before we talk a little bit about Notre Dame?
Go for it.
So what does Notre Dame take out of that game last night? Obviously not the start that they wanted. Great start, I should say. And then after that, it was a disastrous first half. They've got penalties. They had the tight end hitting the snap. Didn't look like he was supposed to get the ball. It wasn't like, I don't think many people are running a jet sweep direct snap right to the tight end. The operation was not running very smoothly for Marcus Freeman's crew. They obviously they did this against Penn State too, right? They come back. They obviously figure out a way to manage things and get themselves back into it. And Ohio State had something to do with that, with how they decided to run things and obviously the turnover. But you got to figure like they'll be kicking themselves, even though they're Notre Dame. You never know when you're getting back in this situation, and just that basically last 20 minutes of the first half really made it an uphill battle for them, and I'm sure they're going to be thinking about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll look at their self-inflicted mistakes. I just thought, particularly that second quarter, you saw the difference in speed, even with Notre Dame with their guys. I mean, there's just Ohio State's skill guys are just super fast. They're hard to tackle. I give, you could say they're second best team. I mean, after the Northern Illinois, what were we saying about Notre Dame? They're done. What's going on here? And for them to not lose again until they get to the national championship game, I think it speaks to Marcus Freeman. I think it speaks to, the players that they do have, and they showed a lot of toughness. Sounds like they're losing or could lose their. Did you see the tweet that their defense coordinator's the priority for the Bengals? That happened like a minute after the game.
Well, it happened right when Jeremiah Smith caught the ball.
That's right.
On 3rd and 11.
Your boy Ian Rappaport.
Yeah, I'm like, well, no wonder they called a zero blitz. Al Golden was looking at his phone right before. What happened?
It's like you've been waiting for that. As soon as that game's over. Okay, say he's the leading candidate for is the Bengals, right? I think.
Yes,
that's where he was the linebackers coach before he took the Notre Dame.
He didn't want to talk about it last night, but it's like that one was in the chamber.
Yeah, that was there you go. It will be interesting to see because obviously the Bears hired Ben Johnson, and after there was reports that they wanted to talk to Marcus Freeman. I don't know. Is the NFL and Marcus Freeman's future here in the next few years? Seems like he'd be. I have a lot of respect for him, and I didn't. I call him. I talked about James Laurinaitis is best friends with him, and Don Barber, former Gopher, great, is friends with him, and they have a group chat with the three of them. They send each other videos. And they said he's just an awesome dude. Always sending back support messages to them, and just a really quality person. So I'd love to see him stay in the college game, but.
Me too.
It wouldn't surprise me if an NFL team said, you know what, that guy's a leader and somebody we'd want to run our organization. So I wouldn't be surprised if some team in the next few years try to hire him.
I think what I take away from Notre Dame season is they don't have to join a conference, because if they can do something like this and still make their NBC money and make it to the national title game, what incentive is there for them to join one of these Power 2 conferences such as the Big Ten?
Right.
I mean, if they can lose to Northern Illinois and then go unscathed in the rest of their ACC schedule, what point is there for them to do so?
Did you see they get to keep all the money too themselves?
Correct.
They don't have to share it with the conference. Like, why would you? What was the figure for getting there? 20 million? Like, you don't have to divvy that up. That's all Notre Dame. So that just emboldens you to say, well, why would we want to go somewhere where we have? Because I think the NBC, I think that was the whole talk about, maybe they'll join the Big Ten. But then I think the NBC came up and basically, I don't know, either matched or was close to what each Big Ten team has given out from their TV distribution. So if it's close and you can still get to the playoffs and you have access to it, why would you want to, forfeit your independence?
Well, that's the only thing. If the Big Ten and SEC in their continuing attempt to monopolize all power and make it the Big Two, if they finally just say, nope, no independence, you got to be in a conference, otherwise we're not in. Like, that's the only way it happens. But I don't see that happening. Burnsy, you're right. That maybe there's been different times in history where joining the conference probably made sense for Notre Dame, but it's always kind of broken their way that they didn't have to do it. The NBC deal that Chip talked about, the fact that you're allowed access to the playoff. Because if that faucet got shut off, then they'd have to jump in with somebody. And James Franklin even said that before they played in the semis. He said, I think everybody should have to be in a conference. No disrespect to anybody, but including Coach Freeman, who's right next to me. But and I understand his point. I do. I get everybody's point that you wanted to try to be as level as everybody have to kind of do the same thing to get in. But as long as people, when they put this new plan together, and I think there's 2 years left on this current TV deal for the playoff, 25 and 26. As long as that's an option for them, and they tried to quote unquote penalize Notre Dame and say you can't host a game.
Yeah.
Or no, you can't be a top 4 seed. But that might change now too, right? It's that you can't
everything's
be a top
on the
4
table.
seed. So that could possibly change, that they could be a number 3 seed, still not host a game on campus, but at least get a first round bye, because that was kind of the penalty for them not being in a conference, is they couldn't get a first round bye, if I remember correctly. And obviously that didn't really hurt them getting into the championship game.
Yeah, the way that the rules are set up now, they can never be get the first round bye because it has to be a conference winner. We'll see if that changes.
I think it will.
I think it should. I mean, I think we've said it for weeks that it's ridiculous that a team that's ranked 11th is, in your rankings is a 3rd seed. That makes no sense. But what was there?
Did you meet about that in the last 2 days? Am I misremembering?
Yeah, they met at the national championship game, and they were saying no change in terms of going to 12 to 16. I think they had to be unanimous in their vote to change the structure of the rules. So I don't know where that stood. I didn't think anything came out on that, but I might have missed it too. But strength of schedule, Notre Dame, I mean, it can't be that high, but I would be stunned. I mean, Notre Dame with how much has changed in college sports with realignment and all these different things going on, that Notre Dame is continuously said, we're good. We're going to stay right here. So if it hasn't compelled them yet, you're right. The only thing that would force them to change is TV money being so out of whack with the big 2 conferences and their ability to get in the playoff. That's the only 2 things I would see that would force them to come off the position that, we're going to stay independent.
I think, again, just speaking conference-wise, now with Ohio State winning it and then Michigan the year before, how do you think, Chip, is our resident SEC resident, or maybe non-resident at this point, how do you think
resident?
Yeah. How do you think Feinblum and all those guys down there in the
Feinblum? Put some respect on Paul Feinbaum's name, please.
Feinblum.
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 I got like 80% right.
Did you add an L for the SEC? Is that why you just wanted to add an L?
Wow. You know what I was thinking of?
Was
your guy from Fox 9 there, Paul Bloom.
Paul Bloom.
Paul Feinbaum. He's a mess. Oh my goodness. Birdsy, have you been drinking?
It's 10 in the morning, Chip. I absolutely not.
Well, judging by some tweets from Lane Kiffin, I'm sure they're still mad about. I love you said entertaining playoff you got here or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, they're still going to cling to. We have the strongest conference and we beat each other and all that stuff, but sorry, that's proofs in the results and you weren't, right. I mean, look, you weren't, I mean, just how it was. So, but those things are cyclical. I mean, Big Ten will come back and probably have a great year next year. I mean, that's how it is. But, they play 8 games, conference games. Big Ten plays 9. I think the Big Ten would want them to play 9, Yep. You're never going to have, when you have so many, it's not like the NFL where you got 32 teams. You got how many different conferences, universities, different everything. You're not going to have uniformity. It's not possible. You don't have one commissioner. You have,
right,
different. So you're not going to have uniformity. So in how your conferences, go all this stuff. So we're always going to have this fodder to argue and debate about. So I don't think the SEC is going to feel less emboldened to think that they're superior to everyone else because they didn't win a national title the last 2 years.
Right. I mean, what was the streak before that? Was over a decade, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Winning it, and it's a different world now with the different. Obviously with 12 teams, we all think it'll probably expand here in the next couple of years. In terms of the 12-team playoff, the first year, I thought it was awesome. Obviously, absolutely. You're gonna want to tweak some stuff. I'm sure they will. It's the first year, college football's been around for like 150 years. Like, not everything's going to go smoothly right away when you just immediately change something. But even you look at the two teams last night, in years past, they would have had no chance to be in a college football national championship game, with Notre Dame losing to Northern Illinois, and obviously with Ohio State losing 2 games, including one to a very average Michigan team. As recently as last year, those 2 teams would not be in it. So I know some people think it devalues the regular season. I think the exact opposite. I think it keeps the regular season relevant for longer for teams like that. It makes big games in November to try to get into a conference title game, to give yourself a chance to try to get yourself into the top 12 if you're going to be one of the at-large bits. I thought, obviously, like I said, we're going to tweak some stuff, but pretty good first year for the college football playoff in its new form.
Let me guys ask you this. I talked to 2 people yesterday that watch college football. They're college football fans. They thought that it lost some steam because it went so long. And I was wondering if, because we're so this magical New Year's Day ingrained in us, like college football, that's when it comes to it comes, college football comes to a head. New Year's Day, that's our time. I don't know if you guys felt that it lost some steam because it went long. It's January 20th when it finished.
Yeah.
Would it help to move the season up?
Yes.
Forget the transfer portal stuff, but have it finish closer to New Year's Day than January 20th. Does that make sense?
That was my one gripe from last night, because I saw a few people online, and I know Guardsy is a part of this bandwagon. Like, I don't know if it was because it was a Monday night deep within the NFL playoffs. It was also Inauguration Day.
Oh, was
just,
it?
Like it just felt like there wasn't as much steam as there used to be for something like this. And I do think it's because the season is so long now, which then we get into the whole argument of moving it up into mid-August for a start date. But then we get into the whole academic calendar situation, which I guess as we sit here today, they're still student athletes, but we'll see how much longer until there's a CBA or whatever there is between all the powers that be. But yeah, I'm with that. It just felt like this thing drug on too far. I don't know. Guardsy, what do you think?
Well, but it was only, if you look in history, it was only about 10 days longer than it's been. I always think like the Monday night, to me, it's always kind of been like, oh yeah, the national championship game's tonight, on a Monday, because you are in the NFL playoffs, and you would have been last weekend too, right? Even if you moved it up a weekend. But I do think, so I think it's always kind of lost a little bit of the steam, but I do agree, probably January 20th, like after you've gone through the last month, NFL is at fever pitch. It is going to, close to January 1 would probably be beneficial for everybody. But the problem is, how do you do it? I mean, I do think it should be easy to just roll up 2 weeks and say, we're just starting camp a week or two early and we're going to go. And that's going to be the bit. Because I don't think they're going to take away any games in college football, just like the NFL. They're only going to add.
Yeah.
So if for all kinds of purposes, I think it would be better to end in earlier January than we are right now. We'll see if they have the juice to pull it off.
Yeah, and I don't know that. I'm curious to see what the TV rankings are, and that's not the end-all be-all, but it might be a little bit different because it doesn't have a. But I mean, you got 2 of the bluest blue bloods on the earth. Now, does that have impact because it doesn't have an SEC team, and we know, that I don't know. I'm curious to see what they were, but I don't know. I was talking with a friend last night, and we were talking about that January 1st, and I was like, man, there's something to that, because it's just it's ingrained in us. Like January 1st, that's college football's time, and even when it was 2, it's like January 7th, right? So you're right. It's not like obscenely different. I mean, 10 days, but if they could move it up, but then it gets into the academic calendar, and also, and I talked about this previously with you guys. It would just feel a little weird to me to have a couple home games when students aren't on your campus.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, we had a friend that I'll tell a story again. That their child went to a Pac-12 school last year, or maybe in this year. It might have been like Washington State. I can't remember who it was, but and they're on the quarter system different. their child missed like 3 games. They had 3 home games before their child even got on campus. I'm like, man, that's odd. It misses. And this was a freshman that couldn't move out there. I mean, you're going in the dorm, so it's not like I thought that would take something away from the experience. Now,
you're probably right.
I don't know. There's probably not a perfect answer to anything, but I would be in favor of moving it up if you could hit more towards the 1st of January than the end.
For a million reasons. The transfer portal thing, which is ongoing, right, is another reason to do it.
Which, speaking of, did you see the AFCA and your guy Craig Bowl? That was their big proclamation after the AFCA convention here in the last couple of weeks.
The 10-day window.
They want to eliminate the December and April spring portal periods and just have one 10-day portal from January 2nd to the 12th. Now, that's got to be adopted, and it doesn't sound like the powers that be want to do that, but that is what the coaches are suggesting to do.
Yeah, but you're still going to how many teams would that impact in if the schedule you're talking about what? 3 or 4 teams?
January 1st, none.
Yeah, well, basically 12, the ones that are in the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right? But some would be done by when's the first round?
A couple. I mean, it was basically, wasn't it? I guess they played the 20th. Yeah, so about half of them probably would.
So probably 6. Yeah.
Yeah. And we even saw last night Ohio State has a guy that I think is going to Cal, the quarterback. He hung.
With
and
they let
Devin Brown.
And was there last night with the confetti, giving Will Howard a hug. So I mean, you can. I think maybe you could even write in like, hey, there's guys that are in the portal. You can talk to them. They can commit if it's a playoff team, but we're going to let them ride it out, which I think is fair. Like we saw that with Penn State backup.
Could you imagine one portal window? How many guys would go in there? That would, if you didn't have 2 windows that kind of
I don't mind
balance it out.
I don't mind minimizing it, honestly. I'm sure Burns, you like the clicks at a couple of different times in the year, so that was.
Right.
I love a break in December.
Yeah,
before we get into the madness that is the portal, whenever it is.
Yeah.
But remember, as we've learned here in the last week, the portal isn't even real. It's all theoretical compared with the new case that's going on there.
You mean the Xavier Lucas case?
Correct.
Are you just driving this bus now? You're just dictating the show?
Well, it's all these natural transitions. I feel like I'm listening to a certain radio station from 3 to 6:30.
So let's do a radio thing. Let's talk about the Xavier Lucas thing, Wisconsin versus Miami, when we come back. That's called a tease, Burnsy.
Ooh.
You can't just blow through all your good content before we talk about Jax Cafe. So we'll talk about what's going on in Madison and Coral Gables in a minute. But first, let's talk about our great friends at Jax Cafe, jaxcafe.com to make your reservations. And Chip Scoggins is brokering a big deal with our friends at Jax Cafe that we want to tell people about. We've told you how great it is for dinner, how great it is for lunch, how amazing it is for brunch, family outings, big events, holiday parties, Valentine's Day, date night, whatever it is. But we may, in the next couple of months, be looking to do something. Chipper, what do we got?
Yeah, we don't have exact details yet, but I will say that something's cooking, something special. Bill came to me with this idea. Let's just say we might have a gathering there, a Pair and a Spare gathering there for a dinner that would benefit a good cause. So we're trying to nail it down, but this is a tease. I want all our Pair and Spare listeners to come and hang out with us for a dinner. Let's just say that. Let's say if we put together dinner
in April,
in April, let's see if we can get an overflow. Let's sell out however many spots there are. But we'll have more exact details. But something big's coming. We'll all 3 be part of it. Probably, maybe some former Gopher players would visit us.
That's the hope, right? Maybe do a little live Pair and Spare show.
We got something big. We got something big rolling out. So just put it in your planner if you guys have planner.
Just block out April.
Block out April, but
maybe right around the non-existent spring game. Maybe
that's
right around then.
Be thinking about it, but we got something big coming at Jackson. We hope when it all finalized that you will join us there.
Do you know how many people have come up to me and said they wish they could have creme brulee with Chip Scoggins, and now that they're going to get the opportunity, they're going to block out everything from 5 p.m. on in the month of April.
So make sure that's on the menu.
Just buckets of it.
We're going to have to get them a Sharpie too, because the amount of start your day at 100% T-shirts that Chip's going to have to sign and then take pictures with, that It's a line that's going to be out the door, Guardsy.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, and you're going to have to. We know that no matter which banquet room we're in at Jax Cafe, they have plenty of power outlets for your chargers. So bring your phone charger. Everybody will be charging. That'll be. You'll get a ticket for the event. Your name will be somewhere, but we're going to check everybody's phones to make sure they're at 100% before they come in. Otherwise, Chip won't be able to proceed with the program. If he knows somebody's dwindling at 78% on their phone, he's not sure they're going to be able to make it through. I got to make sure I get my Uber. I got to make sure it's safe.
We're not checking IDs and make sure you're eligible to drink or old enough to drink. We're checking phones.
So anyway, yeah, Bill called Chip with a great idea that we hope is going to come to fruition in April, and it will. We'll make it happen, but just kind of a live show, maybe a little bit of a roundtable, as Chipper said. Maybe some former Gophers will join us as well, but a good night. And it will be around spring football because spring football will be going on in some form or fashion. Don't know if they're going to do an actual game this year. It didn't bother me one bit that they didn't a year ago, so save your tweets and complaints for Burnsy's message board, because I'm fine with not doing one. But hopefully, yeah, we'll see people in April, and we'll give you more details in the next couple of weeks.
And I do think fans will like the cause, some of the money goes through. So
it's not Ryan Burns. Yeah, that's a double.
That's another tease. That's a double tease. Yeah.
All right. But before that, you can certainly go to Jax, and I would recommend it. Love when people come up and say, hey, I went to Jax Cafe. It was awesome. It was everything that you told me it was going to be. Bill was great. Service was great. Food was amazing. Parking was obviously very easy. Chip's favorite bit. We wouldn't lie to you. And we love going to Jax, and we love how Jax has supported us and supported all of you. So please reciprocate when you can. Make your reservations at jaxcafe.com. All right, Burnsy. You couldn't wait to get here, so outline exactly what's going on with Xavier Lucas. This has been going on now for a while, couple of weeks, and it's starting to get meaty between the player, the agent, the school. The Big Ten has gotten involved, and the other University of Miami. What's going on?
Yeah, this is going to be somewhat fascinating to follow for a few different reasons, but the short version is Xavier Lucas is a Wisconsin corner, young kid, played really well for a freshman, and he tried to enter the transfer portal, of which Wisconsin blocked him from until they didn't, and then he committed to Miami, but then they came back, and now Wisconsin is allegedly going to take him to court at the way I understand it, because he signed an NIL and I'm going to assume one of these new rev share agreements with Wisconsin. Now, the fascinating part to me is a couple things. One, it was supposedly a 2-year deal with the rev share deal, the way I understand it, because that one is separate than what their collective, I think, is called the Varsity Collective.
It is.
It's their Dinkytown athletes, so that's a separate deal. I didn't know you could sign multi-year deals with a school with the rev share. I'm unclear on that, but where this whole thing, why it's contested, is sounds like Lucas got paid some stuff up front and doesn't want to give it back. And the school is like, that's not how this works. And so now they're going to go to court because the NCAA is now saying, well, the portal isn't even real. It's just this kind of theoretical entity, and the NCAA is doing nothing. And the fascinating part is the Big Ten, after Wisconsin released a statement of sorts, kind of outlaying like what's going on, the Big Ten then releases a statement saying they support Wisconsin. So this is essentially the first big portal case that is going to kind of dictate what's going to be happening going forward. Chip, what are your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because that House versus NCAA settlement is not finalized yet. My understanding is that does not get finalized till by a judge, right? That it gets approved by a judge. So this was not, and anybody who's dealt with coaches' contracts, particularly head coaches, when the Gophers hire a new coach, well, that contract doesn't get done that day. They operate under what do you call a memorandum of understanding, right? So
and by the way, people are panicking because Bill Belichick hasn't signed his contract yet at North Carolina.
It happens a lot. Yeah,
almost every time.
Yeah.
Well, you were the guy worried about Sharon Moore when he was operating under that.
Yeah.
I was. No, I was not.
You were.
I definitely was not worried about that.
Yeah. I mean, I can't tell you how many coaches I've covered.
Maybe I was. I
worked for months on a MOU, so that's where I think this is going to be in the legal weeds. Is that a binding contract? Is that not a binding contract? What is that? Because, but you're right, Guardsy. or Burns. I mean, I didn't know you could have a 2-year deal. And is this going to be the precedent for when athletes come in and we have this rev share? If you sign a contract multi-year, does that mean you cannot transfer? Or if you do, you're gonna have to give back the money that you were collected or whatever. It's going to be fascinating to see how that plays out in court. And then the other thing is, Ryan, if so, I'm an athlete. I go to I just tell them I want to enter the portal.
Mm-hmm.
They have to physically do it. The school does it, right? I didn't know they could block you from doing it.
So like an example would be Minnesota got a transfer commitment from a kid by the name of Cole Cabana. Was a running back from Michigan.
Yeah.
And he signed something with DTA. I don't know if he signed something with the university, but then he went back on it and said, I'm actually going to go to Western Michigan, which is where I think he's enrolled now. And Minnesota just kind of went, yeah, that's fine.
Sure.
Like, if he did, the way I kind of understand it is, if you did collect something, you got to pay back, I don't know what percent, what it may be. Again, I'm not privy to what those deals are, but I've only really had the perspective from the Minnesota side of things. And that's where I've never heard of Minnesota blocking someone from entering the portal. I don't think you can legally do that unless this whole rev share thing comes into play, which is they technically signed a contract with the university of which, if they're not going to pay back X percentage of what they already collected from the university, I think that's the whole thing about what's being contested, which is the fascinating part to me of why does Lucas think that he gets to sign the deal, get some money, and then immediately leave to go get a bag from Miami?
Well, I think he's claiming, by the way, that he hasn't gotten any money off the one that he just signed.
So if that is the case, I don't know what Wisconsin is doing.
Well, they also
I don't know what legal precedent they would have then if he doesn't owe them any money.
Now they did say they have receipts from tampering
That's it.
from
That's
Miami.
another part of it. Which knocked me over with a feather. Schools might be talking to other players.
I know
on other teams.
What would they have though?
Enter the
his
portal.
Text messages? Would they have his text message? I
don't know.
DMs or just enough smoke from conversations.
Well,
other people.
This is like when Minnesota blocked Kai Thomas from going to Kansas State because they had physical receipts to show the NCAA that Kansas State tampered with Kai Thomas, which is why he wasn't able to go there and had to go to Kansas. So I almost wonder from Wisconsin's angle, is this just about blocking Miami because you're pissed that they tampered?
Yes.
Or, okay, well, if that's the case, the kid's just going to go to, he's talented enough to go to pick his Florida school at that point because he's from Florida.
And he, by the way, just decided, I think we've talked about this, I'm just going to unenroll from Wisconsin. He's enrolled in Miami, or at least he's applied like on his own. Like he obviously, I don't think can do anything or play, but they're pushing it. They're pushing it hard. But the original blocking of transfers, I remember Bo Ryan got in a lot of public trouble. There was a basketball player named Jared Utoff, I think was his name. And Bo Ryan very publicly, or the player said, because this is back when you could say, yeah, we'll accept your transfer, but we're blocking you from going to any Big Ten school, which was kind of common practice.
Isn't that still the same in the SEC with an SEC transfer chip? Am I remembering right?
I think the whole idea of the portal was you can't do that. Like the whole portal, the idea was they can't block you. Like
but it used to be you could, the conferences, you could kind of had this gentleman's agreement that we're not going to recruit each other's players. But then Bo Ryan added like 3 other random schools and it got really contentious. And I remember talking to somebody in the industry and I said, so what's the benefit to this, or why would he do this? And he said, point blank, it's because those schools Bo Ryan thinks has been tampering with this guy. And you do it to say, we see what you're doing, we don't like it, and we're blocking you. So feel free to go anywhere else. So I would assume that's part of this too and again, you sign a 2-year contract. The other thing Lucas is talking about is that something has happened with his father medically that happened in December. I'm just reading the Ross Dellinger piece at Yahoo Sports from a couple of days ago. That's always a gray area too, right? That's the thing where I'm not saying it's being abused in this case by Xavier Lucas, but we certainly know it has been in the past, right? That an aunt who I'm close with needs life alert and I got to make sure she's got batteries for it. Like it that stuff does, you want that rule. I think is that could the good spirit of that rule gets violated from time to time. Again, I'm not saying that's the case now,
Right.
but that's something else that he's putting forward, going, this was a weird situation, signed a 2-year deal, something changed. Now I want to go to Miami. You're not letting me, blah, 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 blah.
And this kind of bleeds into the not so much that, but the, signing a 2-year deal of not the NIL, because this is totally different than NIL. This is the rev sharing that, the Department of Education came out this week and said that they believe rev sharing should be, following Title IX rules. It's interesting that you're writing contracts before you even know what the ground rules are for that, and how much you're going to have available to spend in football, because now that one's definitely going to get taken to court, because either a player or a team is going to say, no, wait a second. Football brings in 90%
of the revenue.
90% of the revenue, men's basketball, then we should be getting that same percentage of the revenue sharing and not be subject to Title IX rules. So that one's for sure going to go to a court case somewhere. But it's going to be fascinating. I don't know how that's going to play out before, because if they're able to do this starting this fall, are they going to have the ground rules in place before this kicks in?
No, I mean,
no.
Like, these rev share deals aren't even kicking in, which is the fascinating part about this, till July 1st.
Right.
Like, we're still like 5-6 months away. But also, to the Department of Education's point there, are we even going to have a Department of Education at a federal level here in about a month with the new administration that's now taking office?
Whatever it is, it's going to be different than what it is, because this came in hot, right? Oh gosh, this applies to Title IX. What are we going to do? And then 8 minutes later, well, this is all going to change when Trump gets his people in there. This was a Biden DOE bit, and now we're moving it. Just amazing that in college sports, the presidential politics, national politics are jumping into it. It's like, it's the escape we all wanted, right? College sports.
That's right.
But yet, who you vote for might have an impact on whether or not you can pay the quarterback $5 million, or you have to give it to a cross country runner.
Yeah. Did I dream this up? Did the Gophers hire a GM for the athletic department to oversee this? I read that they're doing that, right?
The job is posted. I don't believe they've hired anybody yet.
Correct. Okay. That's the way I understand it, at least. Yeah,
that job is posted, and everybody's doing it. Everybody is hiring a straight up general manager, and we've talked about this before, but the Gophers, I mean, I know Mark Coyle has met with GMs and with the pro sports teams, right? Like, just to figure out how you do a cap, how you value different players, what you do analytically, and it's apples and oranges because it's college, but just to know, hey, percentage wise, this is what we think a quarterback's worth. This is what, I don't know if they've gotten that deep. I'm just speculating, but I know that the athletic department has met with GMs from all over town and all over the country, probably with people that they respect in terms of cap management. So
Rob Brzezinski. They got to get rid of Rob Brzezinski.
Seriously, I mean, are we going to be talking about deferred money and void years and all the stuff that I usually?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, I text Ben Gessling about, what does this mean? Kicking this money down? Are there going to be restructures? Like, I know a bunch of players in Atlanta this week talked about unionization. There's a group that wants to unionize again, but how do you unionize 160 schools or even 60 schools? If it's just the Power 2, Power 4, whatever it is, it's crazy, man.
I know we've talked about it for months now, but especially going into the offseason now, I have never felt more strong that there just needs to be a college football commissioner that can dictate some sort of guardrails, and, to use PJ Flex terms, or just rules that we know can be enforced. Like, so many things just continue to change with NIL, rev share, portal. It's just, there needs to be some, as my father would say, a come to Jesus, just in terms of with college football, because we all love it. And it's, again, so do so many of our listeners, but it just needs to be, because it's clear the NCAA is just going to get walked through, and they just have accepted it at this point.
Yeah.
Someone needs to put in some firm guardrails in terms of what is this thing going to look like. Again, if the players want to get all this money, okay, well, then they're also going to be treated with binding contracts and deals and things of that nature. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the things I would love to see this sport seriously explore, is either break off by itself and do the commissioner bit or whatever it may be. It's just the goalposts continue to change seemingly on the weekly basis now with the sport.
But the problem is, even within, let's not even say college sport, but just college football, man, there's a wide discrepancy between haves and have-nots. And so how do you have uniform guardrails for the Big Ten and SEC and everyone else?
Yeah, the Mountain West, the MAC.
The Mountain West. Because in some cases, you're talking about apples and oranges. And so you're going to find consistency on how things should be run. It's not like the NFL where, in theory, they're all in this equal playing field. It's not equal. And so how do you ever come up with what you think is fair for what's fair for, even within the Big Ten, what's fair for Ohio State and Michigan might not be fair for Minnesota Northwestern.
And what's their what's their incentive to give? Like we talked about with baseball. What's the Dodgers' incentive in a couple of years to go, oh yeah, we'll share more of our revenue, or the Yankees, right? Like, now the counter argument is, well, you need people to play, and we've always talked about that. You do need to fill out a schedule. You do need to have other teams to play. As much as you'd like to have your Super 16 teams and just you guys play each other and determine the champion, you do need the have-nots in there, quote unquote. You got to fill out a schedule. You got to have, theoretically. So yeah, it's going to be wild, because that was Nick Saban richly. It's very funny. Saban has been an awesome addition to game day. I think that's almost unanimous. Like, it's great to have him. It's fun to have him involved, and clearly the game day cast loves having him involved. But when he's talking about yesterday that this isn't sustainable to have one team paying 20-30 million and another team paying $3 million. It's like, you mean like it wasn't when you got to Alabama and all of a sudden you're making $10 million, your facilities are nicer than everybody, and Alabama's making more money than anybody that may or may not be going directly to the players. We can argue about that, but it's going into the football program, right? Like, you're being funded at a different level than Minnesota's being funded at. Like, it's just so rich. Like, that the guy who benefited off of unbelievable investment, it's always those guys that go, we got to slow this down. Well, you didn't mind it 15 years ago when you're
winning national titles
and you're getting the first 7, 8, 9 million. Yeah, it wasn't sustainable for anybody to have 52 analysts, and now that's what they're trying. Everybody's chasing, trying to get as many quality control guys as they can, because that's what you did. So that's pretty rich to me. That this is not sustainable. But I was the one that was front of the bus. I was seat 1A in first class and Delta 1 riding this thing to a nice lake house in someplace outside Tuscaloosa. But we got to watch this. It's a little rich. It's a little rich for me. And I love Saban, but that's a little rich.
Yeah.
It's very pot calling the kettle black. It certainly is. Yeah.
Anything else we need to discuss? Burnsy, anything else? You were kind of the host of the show today. I liked it. I appreciate it. I didn't have to really transition or do any topics. You were ready to roll. What else do we need to talk about here quickly in our last couple of minutes?
I hope Minnesota finally announces Danny Collins as their defensive coordinator here at some point, now that it's been, I think, over a week since I kind of reported it. At some point, we do have to announce a defensive coordinator.
They're all on the recruiting trail, Ryan. They'll get to
Burnsy, it. I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Why do they have 8 running backs on scholarship?
That's a question I love to know myself, because that is something that because Minnesota ended up taking their 8th scholarship running back. What a transition from Chip there, by the way. Just a
good
transition.
Just on my mind. Just curious.
Yeah. So they took an 8th scholarship running back, a kid from Louisiana who was Mr. Football in Louisiana this past year by the name of Xavier Ford. And he is going to be their 8th. And the way I understand it is it's either Fleck or their de facto GM, Marcus Hendrickson, or somebody up there. Seems pretty clear that they think that they need 8 scholarship running backs on their 105. Now, I think that's far too many. I'd be okay with 7, maybe even 6. Now, I'm also aware that we're just 2 years removed from seeing the running back 5, Jordan Newbin, have to get 130 carries in the final 6 games of the year. But I think that is almost the exception and not the rule. I'm also aware that that's how Bucky Irving and Kai Thomas were able to go to the forefront. So that's like 2 of the last 4 years. They've somehow between injuries and putting the ball on the turf or whatever it may be, have been there. But that's something that Fleck and his personnel staff have dictated. They really wanted to get to 8, and so they went out and got Xavier Ford. A kid from Louisiana visited in negative 15 degrees, and I asked him, how was that? And he goes, I liked experiencing it. And I was like, you're going to be perfect for this.
I'm disappointed in both of you guys because what do you need in Minnesota and what do you need in the Big Ten?
I think it'd be a great name for a podcast, but it's on the tip of my tongue.
You need a pair and a spare.
Oh, what a name.
You need a pair and a spare, guys. And sometimes you need more. And in Minnesota, when it's cold, like right now in my car, all 4 tires are telling me they need air.
That's right.
I'm looking at it and I go, well, when I started driving 10 minutes ago, it was this tire. Now it's that tire. And I don't want to get out and fill them up. I'm just riding it out. It hits, I think it's going to hit 0 by about 1 o'clock on Tuesday. Once we get back into positive temps, I'll go. You need a pair and a spare.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Glenn Mason said a long time ago at the University of Minnesota, you need a pair and a spare. And damn it, we're going to listen to Mace. And we're going to have our pair, spare, air, and multiple spares.
We should put that in our intro. I think it'd be a great idea.
I think I might. Who was the linebacker that Corey Heatherman recruited right before he went to Miami? Because that seemed like, I know you were also worried, Burnsy, about how many running backs they have and how many linebackers they don't.
Jeff Roberson, who is a starting linebacker at Oklahoma State this past year, and he stayed. So Corey didn't take him to Miami, so they got a little competition in there for Maverick Baranowski, Devin Williams, or the pride of Woodbury, the home of Chip Scoggins, Mr. Joey Gerlach himself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Mr. Personal Foul at Camp Randall. That's going to be
that's my favorite Joey Gerlach moment to this point.
Well, that's it. I'm sorry, Joey, and your family. And I'm just having fun. Things happen, but he's going to have to change the narrative. That's the only time any of us heard his name was when he somehow extended a inept Wisconsin drive and made that game a little bit more interesting than it needed to be.
Yeah,
yes. Made that game, but you've got time to. I believe in you, Joey Gerlach. You've got time to turn it around. I'm sure Grim will be talking to you on our Minnesota Grown segment of the pregame show, brought to you by Bushel Boy, Minnesota Grown for over 30 years. All right, anything else we need to discuss? We'll be back next week, I think, probably. Or what do we think? Yeah, we might as well. Right?
With your special guest, Paul Feinblum, was that?
Yeah, Paul Feinblum will join us. It should be great. Yeah, my goodness, Burnsy. Paul Feinblum.
I'm trying my best. You know what? I will change my best with the Neckton mentality for next week. How's that?
You have one job and no kids. How is your mind so scrambled? I mean, Chip is juggling multiple interviews and projects. You know, he's texting during the show. I don't even know what day it is here today.
Truthfully, all day I just sit here and just twiddle my thumbs, just like this, just looking for things to do because I have no kids. You know,
you're waiting for high schools to get out all over the country so you can text high school kids.
And then text grown
about
men about teenage boys.
Yes, exactly. I just wanted to leave it there. You wait high schools to get out so you can text high school kids.
Yep.
To see what they're thinking about college football. So if anybody wants to clip that, take it out of context. And
going into my 15th year doing that. It's not creepy at all.
I know. It's exactly right. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. As always, please subscribe if you haven't. Check out our YouTube channel if you haven't. We love the comments. Those are always very good as well. And make sure you check out Jax Cafe, jaxcafe.com to make your reservations. Valentine's Day, less than a month away. So if you want to make that a nice entry point, I can't recommend Jax Cafe any more than we already have. Appreciate Bill and his staff and his crew over there for helping us out. We will talk to you next week on the Pair and a Spare podcast.